It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's another edition of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Yours truly here on the week of April the 23rd, 2025. We're back after the lone bye week it was for the NASCAR Cup Series. 28 straight weeks. That is 7 consecutive months, folks. They're going to be racing on a Sunday. It is going to be a long, long year. But that is okay. They get paid to do this, and we get to watch them go in circles every single Sunday. With that being said, this guy has about 11 starts before he makes his 500th start. So let's go into the Inferno. Our Steven Stumpf talked with Casey Mears right after his first start in a few years, that being after Martinsville. Here's the interview right now.
Now it's time for...
His mom, Carol, runs his fan club and handles some of his business interests. It's a true racing family.
White flag in
the
the
Mears
air.
gang,
Yeehaw.
Bakersfield, California.
He's going to do it.
Roger, Rick, now Casey. All he needs is a gallon of gas.
He doesn't even need this now. He just needs fumes. That's all he needs.
Yaley second. Kyle Petty third. Reed Sorensen, Brian Vickers.
No pressure, and he has got it made. He can coast. He can coast from there.
For the National Guard, Casey Mears is going to win his first Nextel Cup race, the Coke 600.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Martinsville was your first start in the Cup since the 2019 500. It's only your second start since you stopped driving full-time at the end of 2016. So I guess my first question is, what have you been doing in the last couple of years before you came back?
The majority of the thing that I've been doing is spending time with my family, and my son plays baseball, my daughter's a competitive cheer, so outside of school and running them back and forth. Well, my daughter's driving now, so I don't run her back and forth anymore, but going to their events and just being present and being with my family. And we dabbled in investing into building a spec home in Paradise Valley, which was fun, and I enjoyed that process. But at the same time, would periodically do some races. I did a race in Connecticut at Lime Rock. That was kind of a pro-am style race in a TA2 car, and Greg Biffle and Ryan Newman and Danny Sullivan and a handful of other sports car guys and e-car guys that were all a part of that deal. It was a lot of fun. And a couple of years ago, I did a race down in Mexico City at the road course there with a Super Copa car that the series was owned by Michelle Jourdain, and that was kind of a celebrity event as well, where we kind of a pro-am where the celebrity drivers ran the first half of the race, and then the pro drivers that typically drive those cars week in and week out would jump in and run the race. But it was a bunch of ex-IndyCar guys with Adrian Fernandez, Max Pappas, Paul Tracy, Mark Blundell, a bunch of those guys, and that was a lot of fun. Did a handful of SST races with Robbie Gordon in his truck series, and those are a blast to drive. Been dabbling in the Baja 1000. I ran 1 year in 2019 with Geiger Brothers in a trophy truck. A couple years later, with Robbie Gordon in his truck, which was great. And the last couple of years, I've ran with Brendan Gaughan in his Class 1 car, and that's been a real fun relationship to rekindle. And his dad and my dad race against each other in off-road. And obviously, Brendan and I raced against each other in the Cup Series. So, and we were teammates. Way back when I was, 13, 14 years old, we were teammates in an off-road series way back. So, had a really good time, with him the last couple of years.
So it's clear that you still, live and breathe racing. Even when you're not racing, I'm guessing you're still in tune to watching as many races as you can. Is that the case?
Somewhat. When I'm at home and sitting around, I definitely tune in and check out the races. I'm at a lot of baseball tournaments these days and cheer competitions, so we end up being tied up and kind of busy. But definitely, if I'm at home, I'm going to throw the race on, or if we happen to go somewhere to have a bite to eat, and it's a bar-style restaurant, I'm asking them to change the channel to the race for that weekend. And And so I've been keeping up, not as diligently as I did back when I ran, but still definitely enjoy watching the races and seeing how everything transpires.
And Martinsville is your 490th start. I know you're now chasing 500. How did the steal of the Garage 66 come about? And I guess what was there anything in particular that gave you the decision to want to chase 500?
Yeah, I've told the story a few times, but when I was at a test in Phoenix when Jimmy Johnson was running, he was in an IndyCar for a couple of years. When he was going back to run stock cars again, the test that NASCAR let him do was in Phoenix. I happened to be there, so I drove out there and was supporting him in his test and seeing how things go, and just wanted to be around. And a reporter came up to me and started asking me about, I think what I thought about the new car. And he started off the conversation by saying, man, you've been around for a while. You've ran a lot of cup races. You have 489 starts. And I didn't think much of it. But then as I was walking away or even driving home later that night, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, wow, that's really close to 500. I've never really paid attention to my stats. Clearly, because if I would have paid attention to those stats, I might have been trying to chase this, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. But, it's been fun, coming back here and getting to run at Martinsville was a really, really good time. What happened was I started talking to Doug Barnett, who's been a good friend. We worked together in the Jermaine Geico scenario for a lot of years, and he's always been trying, every year really since I haven't been in the sport, he's always been trying to put a little something together here and there where maybe we can go run a race, or whether it be a truck race or Xfinity deal, and it's just never really translated into anything happening. And I think partially part of that is because I took off and moved to Arizona and got away from the heart of where all this stuff is. But then he happened to have a conversation with Carl. He's like, maybe you should just give him a call and talk. So Carl and I got on the phone, and I think we ended up talking on the phone for over an hour, just started BSing about old times. And, Carl was racing in the Cup Series when I was first started racing in the Cup Series. And he's always been around, in some way or fashion, since then. And we started having a conversation, and he said, hey, I hear you want to get these starts. And I said, yeah, I'd love to get back and do it. And he goes, well, would you be interested in driving my car? And I said, sure. I said, I think that'd be, a lot of fun to go try to do that. And he was like, really? You want to do it? And I said, sure. And he goes, well, that would be great, because he said, I have a lot of younger guys that drive for me and hit and miss. And, people with great sponsorship. He's dancing all over the place between Xfinity and trucks and a handful of cup races. And, he's done a good job of balancing that and created a living for him and his family. And so he goes, I really think I could sell you. You got a name, you've been around for a while. If you don't mind, let me give it a shot. So, apparently he made a few phone calls, and a week later he called me back and said, man, we're good for Martinsville. So, I said, great, I'll do it. Let's make it happen. And, it's been a good thing. I think the odds of us running good in that scenario was going to be pretty difficult. Between, him just being a super small program and no simulation, no really engineers to speak of. He has his own engine program, which he knows is a little down on power. But for what we were trying to do to try to check that box and get into the race to get closer to 500 starts, it was perfect. And, we had a lot of good response. It was great to be in front of the fans, and I couldn't believe the amount of fans that showed up for the race in support of, me and what I used to do, and fans that came from all over to come check it out, and a lot of familiar faces. It was really cool to see, and then just seeing everybody in the garage again and being in the mix was a lot of fun. The on-track stuff was just, it was difficult. We didn't run well. The car was super tight. We're a little down on horsepower, but they made some really big swings at it and got the car a little bit better throughout the race. And then we ended up having a left front flat, which tore up the inside of the fender well, and there was a big piece of carbon that was rubbing on the left front fender from there on out that we couldn't really see from the outside. But as soon as they pulled the hood up, we could see why the left front tire kept wanting to lock up. So It was a struggle, but we finished, ran all the laps. It was great for me to get those kind of laps under my belt, and hopefully we can, put the rest of the races together.
And then lots to ask now, but this is your first time in the next gen car. What was the experience like? How different is driving this car compared to the Gen 6 and car tomorrow and so on?
It's really hard for me I didn't just get out of the previous car and then jump into this new car, so it's hard to give a real accurate description on what I feel. All the details of what I feel like is different. I mean, clearly the obvious stuff is that, wider tire, it's got a shifter now that, sequential box that it didn't have before. All those things, I definitely can tell a difference in the way the tire responds, with the shorter sidewall compared to what we used to have. There used to be a lot more flex in the tire and the cars would move around a lot more, where this is a little bit more firm. But at the same time, at a place like Martinsville, it's not probably the best place to really understand all the differences between the two cars, because there's not really a lot of aero that comes into play. And once you get to those bigger tracks, there's probably a bigger drastic difference between the two cars. A place like Martinsville, we were getting, even towards the end of 2016, and when I was running on a regular basis, we were starting to get the cars really stiff, really flat, and they had a lot of platform. So in my mind, the car didn't feel a whole lot different. The brake pressure was a big difference. You didn't have to, in these cars, the brakes work so much better. Having a bigger wheel, bigger rotor, and bigger calipers on it, it just didn't take near as much pressure as it used to stop the car. So from that standpoint, it was a lot easier. Just have to press the brake pedal very hard to get the car to stop. But outside of that, it just kind of felt like old Martinsville. I got about 5, 6. 8, 10 laps in, and it immediately felt super comfortable in the car, and was just focused on trying to fix it and make it faster.
And you mentioned being back, the fan reception, being back in the garage. Was there anyone in particular that you were excited to see and got to meet that you hadn't seen in several years, got to reconnect with?
The list is so long I can't tell you. I've been coming to the Phoenix races, and I did stop in when I knew that I was back east here to fit a seat. I did go to Atlanta earlier this year, so I got to catch up with quite a few people when I was there. But honestly, just everybody. Some people I hadn't seen in 10, 15 years, and some I'd seen a year ago, but not on a regular basis like I used to. So it was just great catching up and seeing all the NASCAR officials that I hadn't seen in a long time. I was in the sport long enough to where I worked with a lot of different crew members, so it's hard pressed to find a team that there isn't somebody there that I used to work with or knew or worked with in the past. So it's just kind of like a homecoming again.
Yeah. You're also at the tweet up, and it's funny when I was talking to Doug and trying to set this interview up, he was talking about how it seemed like you guys, kind of expected to go in and go out, but you've been busy all week. You've been on the Dale Jr. download, and you've talked about the fans. Just kind of, were you surprised at how much, fan support there was to you coming back?
Yeah, 8 or 10 years goes by, and you just kind of, you stop getting recognized in places and things like that, and it wears off a bit, and so I just didn't know what the reception was going to be like, and I was really surprised. I was really, flattered in a way that a lot of people were still supportive, and how many people wanted to come out and check it out and be a part of it. So for sure, and I just, some of that's wore off for me, and it's completely fine. At that point in your career when things are strong, you're there week in and week out, it becomes kind of a normal thing. But it was, what's the right word? What's the right word I'm looking for? It was just, at the end of the day, it was just saying that it was really flattering that all the fans came out and were supportive as they were, and you feel like people forget, which is fine because you're not there on a week-to-week basis. But to see the response was just super cool, for me, and I think I just tried to soak it in as much as I could, and not that you don't appreciate the fans, like I did in the past, but when you're a week-to-week basis, doing all you can to be as fast as you can, doing all you can to beat those guys that you're racing with, it's an important part, and you know how special it is, but you really don't soak it in, and this time I was able to, step back and really appreciate it. So
Now with 10 starts to go, your next start would be 491. Do you have any set races planned, or are you and Carl and the rest of the six, are you guys working on it? And is there any tracks in particular that you'd like to try and get something together for?
Yeah, there's nothing set in place yet. There's some interest from sponsors. Carl would definitely like to do something again, and I'd love to. Obviously, I've made it known that I want to get to that 500th start. So, I've just put word out to everybody that I'd love to, any opportunity that could come available, I'd love to be a part of, and at the same time working with Carl to put some stuff together as well. But we don't have anything set in place. It's an interesting landscape right now with the charter program and what cars are available. What teams can even facilitate, doing some of these races part-time. I think one big factor is that, obviously the charter programs get a fair amount more prize money than the unchartered programs. So, a little guy like Carl, or even a third or fourth team within the race team organizations, when they go to run those cars, it's more expensive than it is to run a charter car. So that's changed the landscape a lot. So when you're a one-off deal and you're trying to put something together, it's really hard to explain to a sponsor that doing it in this fashion is more expensive than if you're with a full-time program. So navigating all that is a bit difficult. But fortunate thing is we do have people that are interested and want to be involved, and hopefully we can piece that together.
Yeah. And kind of go through also the approval process. I know you couldn't do, from what you said, you couldn't do the 500 immediately. So what is kind of just what's the process been of, getting back into it, getting physically ready, to get back in the car? What has all of that been like?
Well, from a physical standpoint, I feel like I'm in better shape than I was when I was driving. I work out, 5 to 6 days a week, and have pretty much since I've gotten out of the car. I got the time on my hands. I drop the kids off at school, and that's what I go do. I work out. And Trish is always on me to try to eat better and eat right. She kind of keeps me in check. But the approval process for NASCAR, I don't think there is an official approval process, but I definitely wasn't approved to run the super speedways. And Martinsville was a perfect place for me to kind of just get back in the mix, get out to the track again. They can watch me, make sure I don't make any rookie or embarrassing mistakes, and hopefully now after running Martinsville, I'll be approved to run the super speedways. I haven't really had that conversation with them yet. But that was the indication that I got when we talked about me being approved to run Martinsville.
So, and I imagine that once you do get approved, I imagine that the 2026 500, trying to get a ride for there, that'd probably be a priority, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing. It's we all know that obviously the Daytona 500 is the biggest race that NASCAR has all season long, and I'd love to be a part of that. It's an amazing experience. What better way if I could put, and the timing of this may not even remotely work out, but if I could get another 9 races under my belt this season and finish off my 500 start at the Daytona 500, that'd be pretty amazing. But we also know the challenges of that, right? The odds of me going there to Daytona with a car that has points and is inside the charter program where you're locked in is pretty small, right? So to go to Daytona in that scenario, I'd want to make sure that I was with a really good program. Has a strong motor, has everything they need to really go and try to qualify it down speed, and then if not, have the best piece you can have to go really, make the show. So, I'd love to make that happen if it was a possibility.
That's mostly everything I had, but before you go, I guess I have one more question, and it's, obviously so much has changed since your last full time. We got, stage racing, the playoff points, and so on. The charters, granted, the charters were there your last full-time year, but but coming back to NASCAR, coming back and doing a race, kind of what's your take on where the sport is now, and and where it's going? Like, do you kind of like what you're seeing, so to speak?
I gotta say, the races that I've been watching over the last couple of years, I've really enjoyed. I mean, every now and then, the combination of the tire and the car will get to a track and things don't quite play out. But I think 95% of the time, NASCAR has done a really good job on, putting on a great show. The cars, at some tracks are not easy to drive. They step out, they get free. You watch these guys. I mean, they're driving the shit out of these cars. So it makes it fun to watch. And but for me, the stages are really interesting to me. I mean, I like them. I'm glad you have them. And I remember, I think stages came, gosh, it was like a year or two after I wasn't running anymore. And that Germain program was a smaller program. And we were usually a session behind, it seemed like. We were always a couple tenths off or a tenth off. And we'd get to practice and we'd make a couple changes and we'd get better. And then the guys that just showed up, faster than us would also make a change and get a little better. And we're just always chasing them. So it seemed like when we started the race, it always seemed like after the first pit stop, we made an adjustment that kind of put us right in the game. And I can't tell you how many times we'd be running, 20th, 18th, and we'd have a long green flag run. We'd go a lap down. And then you're kind of stuck with a lap down the majority of the race. You make an adjustment, your car gets better, and now you can compete for top 10s time-wise, but you're mired in the back a lap down, So the stages I thought were awesome, especially in that scenario. I mean, I can't tell you how many better results we would have had if we had those, when I was still around. So, and I think it creates excitement. It definitely, takes the ball out of NASCAR's court to, make the race exciting. It does it on its own now, which is great. And, I really like it. But yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. I mean, the pit stops obviously are a little quicker, or can be, because of not hitting 5 lug nuts on each wheel. That's kind of cool. I mean, that's how it was when I raced Indy cars. So for me, my heart is in NASCAR because I was there for so many years, but I have roots in Indy cars. So to come back and drive a car now that has a sequential box and they change tires like I used to when I was driving Indy cars in the late 90s, early 2000s, is kind of neat. So I think it's a good blend of what I've done my whole life.
Well, that's all I had. Just thank you so much, Casey, for your time, and good luck in chasing 500.
All right, man. I sure appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Once again, that was Steven Stumpf with Casey Mears. I think Casey's got about 11 races till he gets 500 starts. So hopefully he'll be able to get that number accomplished. Let's dive on into what is still hot and catch up on the latest news and notes of the NASCAR world.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
All right, I'm going to bring in my at-track correspondent for FrontStretch.com, does a plethora of things, also covers college football and the absolute bananas of the SEC, that being Mr. Tanner Marlar. Tanner, what's going on, boss man? How you doing, bud?
Brian, what's happening, man? I'm doing great. Just got out of a little bit of a night class. We're hanging in.
Right on. My wife is starting her master's in a couple weeks, so she's got some night classes as well coming up. So I don't feel your pain, but I kind of am going to be associated with that starting in a couple weeks. So
you'll feel it soon. You'll feel it soon.
Yep, I gotcha. Another guy that's feeling it is going to be when we were talking about a plethora of topics that we were going to talk about, we did not talk about this because it happened early this morning. Spire Motorsports, Rodney Childers, they have parted ways. Tanner, I think everybody was expecting it was going to be a absolute rejuvenation for Justin Haley, and he was going to be absolutely on top of the world with Rodney, a experienced championship winning crew chief. That did not happen, and it has gone from bad to worse. Obviously, Kyle Larson pit crew, they got a couple race suspensions, so they took a couple pit crew members from the number 7 car. So it's just been a mess for the 7 team, and unfortunately, Rodney Childers gets the short end of the stick. They parted ways Wednesday afternoon. How surprised were you with this news coming out kind of out of nowhere?
I was surprised, like a lot of people. I think the general reaction was surprised because, Rodney Childers has been such a staple in this sport at whatever level he's been at for so long. It's almost like, and to compare it to other sports, every team has their untouchables. And to me, it felt like wherever Rodney Childers was, he was an untouchable. right? It was, you build the team around Rodney and what he could do and what he could get out of a car. And if you had a driver that could make it work and could make it stick, you could go far. You didn't have to have the best driver in the field because Rodney could give you one of the best cars in the field. And that, especially in the current state of the Truck Series, is a big kind of part of the equation. So it was definitely an initial shock reaction. And I'm intrigued to see what direction Spire goes from here, because the question now is, well, what was the problem? What was the real problem? That's the logical next question, and I think we'll know that before the end of the 2025 season.
Yeah, it feels like it just came out of nowhere. Obviously, they're 23rd in points, so not the start that they wanted. But I mean, either it's going to be really, really beneficial for them, or it's going to go in absolute wrong direction. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens for Justin Haley and the number 7 team. Let's dive on in now into our soundbite of the week, where we talk, or should I say, where we hear from a second-place finisher that eventually became the winner, and that being in Sammy Smith.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track racing.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Feeling rocking here.
Yeah, thanks. It's cool. It's tough to kind of win them like that. That's unfortunate. I've been on the other end of the stick of where Jesse's at, but yeah, it's I guess take him how you can get him, I guess.
Just how'd you find out?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously been some issues for about 2 hours now, so me and my crew chief just stayed around, and I got nowhere else to be besides church tomorrow for Easter, and decided just to hang around for a little bit, so I'm glad I stayed.
Once again, that was Sammy Smith on his victory, apparently, in Rockingham. Tanner, I think he said it best. You'll take it however you can, but, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like when a team gets a no-hitter. It's like you really didn't earn it, but, I mean, they're going to get credited for it. It's just, it feels weird. It's also kind of like a tie in football, so to speak. Like, you don't feel like you won.
No. And, I think it's different in NASCAR because if you would have told Sammy Smith going into the day, hey, you're going to come in second at the first race back at this track in years, I think he'd have been like, okay, I'll take that result. Obviously, a win is better. I think with, the way racing is set up and NASCAR is set up, the second wasn't going to be a bad finish, but you definitely will take the win. You most definitely will take it. I thought it was very funny that him and his crew chief both elected to stay around for the duration of kind of the inspection process. I enjoyed that. But yeah, Sammy Smith picking up the win. Those of you who don't know, Front Stretch has its own picks of the week kind of deal that we run within the company. Yours truly picked Sammy Smith to win, so I was elated to figure out about the DQ for my point standings.
Yeah, I picked Carson Kvapil, so that I didn't even really have a shot at that. So, it was like, okay, whatever, move on, keep it moving. How about it? But, it is what it is. But, Jesse Love failed post-race inspection. The appeals process panel heard his appeal today. It was upheld, so the disqualification stands. That means officially Sammy Smith is your winner. Tanner, let's head on into our final thoughts and wrap it up.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line.
Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Segment is in the air. Mr. Tanner Marlar, whatever you want to rant, rave, or anything in between, my friend, the floor is yours, brother.
Oh, gosh, I've got a lot to rant about. And actually, you know what? I'm going to pick it. I'm going to go back a few weeks. Rockingham was great, and I loved it. And I could rant about the fact that the Cup Series needs to be there, but I'm going to go back a week and say we need to take away a date from Bristol and give it to Rockingham for the Cup Series. What's the worst that could happen, right? I mean, the worst that could happen is we have to watch another Bristol at a cooler track or a track that's arguably could be cooler, right? I don't think there's a downside to that. Still leave the Bristol night race. It's tradition. It's historic. It's wonderful. It's a great atmosphere. That track does not deserve 2 Cup races a year with the Cup racing that we've seen on it. Give Rockingham a try. See if it works. It can't be any worse.
For the first time in my 7 to 8 years covering the sport travel-wise, I got to check a little bit different. I got to check a little bit of a different thing, and that was covering a different series. That being the NTT IndyCar series. Now, when I first walked into the paddock at Long Beach, and folks, it's a paddock. It's not a garage area. It's the paddock. I was blown away. Just the randomness that I saw. There was wings of race cars on pit lane. There was, you don't just push your car to pit lane. You have these like little there's like the little hangers, and they drag the car to the pit lane. It's such a different feel, and I feel like there's one thing that really set out from what I experienced, and that was the popularity of Pato O'Ward. It felt like, folks, Pato O'Ward was like Dale Earnhardt Jr. The amount of fans that were at his garage or his paddock area was like of Chase Elliott or Jimmy Johnson. And I don't get why IndyCar does not promote him like they should. I don't know why they don't promote him like they promoted Jeff Gordon and Dale Jr. back in the day, but Pato O'Ward could become a worldwide, I should say, superstar. They just need to execute it. And I personally loved it. It was a caution-free race. It was under 2 hours. Kyle Kirkwood won his second Long Beach race of his career. It was amazing from start to finish. And I even saw NASCAR's Ben Kennedy there. Obviously, IMSA was there the day before. But could we see NASCAR head to Long Beach? Time will tell. But as a first time covering a NTT IndyCar series, I definitely was hooked. Tanner, you know what else I am hooked on is your content from frontstretch.com, my friend, my at-track correspondent, my man. You're kind of doing a double duty in 3 weeks, doing Bristol, then you had a bye week, and then you're doing Talladega. What is that going to be like for you coming up this weekend? Are you ready to experience Talladega in all of its mystified glory?
Look, I grew up probably 3 hours from Talladega, right?
Nice.
I'm from Corinth, Mississippi. Kossuth, if you want to get technical. My Aggies down there will get mad at me if I don't say Kossuth. It's an experience like no other to be a fan at Talladega. And I got to experience it as a true fan a couple times while I was in undergrad before I started working with Front Stretch. And I'm incredibly excited to be experiencing it now from the media side of things, right? I enjoy the fact that I get to take my media training into this sport, which I love and have such a deep background with. I'm excited to be. I've called it running the triple. I'm excited to be running the triple. I was at Bristol, obviously 2 weeks ago. This past Saturday, I was at a crate racing USA late model race, taking some photographs, and then this weekend I'm at Dega, right? It's 3 straight weekends full of great racing for me. I could not be more excited. I'm taking the camera. Hopefully we'll get to share with our lovely Front Stretch readers and listeners all the sights and scenes of Talladega Boulevard. It's my goal, at least. I don't know if we can show all of them, but we'll show what we can. It'll be a wonderful time.
You know, Tanner, I feel like that we could maybe start a Front Stretch OnlyFans account, and some of the content you see this weekend could be on that site. But you know, the boss man continually tells me no on that. So unfortunately, we cannot bring that to the viewers. But I do hope you have a great time. I've been there the past 2 years, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So have so much fun. You're going to be covering all the latest for us, you and Mr. Dalton Hopkins, who is a party in itself. The two of you guys are going to have a grand old time. So make sure to follow all the latest content at frontstretch.com. Tanner, where can everybody find you, my man?
Twitter, Tanner_Marlar. That's Tanner_MARLAR. If you like sports, if you like automotive news, I'm also doing a lot of breaking automotive news for topspeed.com and the Valnet Enterprises. So if you like anything automotive, auto racing, or college sports, I'm your guy.
I absolutely love it. I love all three of that. So it's going to be fun. Once again, frontrich.com coming up next on the Front Rich Podcast Network. We got Through the Gears. My man Wyatt Watson's got all the latest betting odds for you and more. Once again, frontrich.com. For Mr. Tandem Marlar, Bryan Nolen, Trey Lau producing this program. Thank you so much, and we'll talk with you guys next week to recap Talladega.